hope you had a great time competing in Quizlet Live against some of your peers. It's always a great practice to study vocabulary before you take on a task. For example, before you take a test, you should always review the vocabulary to make sure you know what the question is asking you. If you don't understand the words, then it's hard to answer the question correctly. What we're going to do next is dive straight into the Summit Learning platform, and we're going to start talking about all of the things from day-to-day activities, from mentoring, how's it going to work, to tests, to grades, to all this crazy stuff. So bear with me. This is going to be a lot of sit and watch, but I promise that right after, we're going to have a scavenger hunt. So make sure that you pay attention because there may be prizes involved. So here we go. When you first log into Summit, what you're going to do is go to summitlearning.org. Then you're going to enter in a class code, just like you do for Google Classroom, and it's going to generate your classes. Now, you will have to enter a code for every single class, but your teachers and I, we're going to help you do that after we go through kind of this logistical part. So don't do that just yet. We'll get to that in just a little bit. When you log in and after all your classes are there, you'll never have to do that again until the next school year. So don't worry about having to memorize those codes or anything crazy like that. You'll always log in with your Google username and password that the school gives you. When you log in, you will see this week view. The week view is a place for you to put goals. Goals are so important this year. If we are able to set goals and know how to mark our progress, then we're not going to be sure if we're being successful or not. And this year, whether it's distance learning and we're all on the computer every day, or if we're back in the classroom doing crazy hands-on activities, we still want to be able to track our progress. How well are we doing? Do we need support? Do we need help? Are we doing better than we did last week? Are we doing better than we did when we were in the 5th grade or 6th grade or 7th grade? All of those things can be tracked by goal setting. Here, you're going to set SMART goals, and we'll talk about that in mentoring in the weeks to come. But you can set goals right here on this page. So for example, if I needed to take a test on Wednesday, then I need to go ahead and set it so that I know that my goal will be to study for that test so I can pass. If I don't study, then I'm not really sure if I'm going to be able to pass. But if I study and I have a study plan, I then increase my chances of being able to pass that assessment. On this week view, go ahead and take a look. You're going to see that this student has several goals for Wednesday. Let's say that we are the student and we are looking at the content assessment. That's a fancy word for test. We have taken it, we got a good score, we got an 8 out of 10, that's an 80%. We can mark that sucker off. Let's go ahead, we're gonna click it, and it turns green. Anyone you've ever known who went to South Floyd in the past 4 years in the 8th grade, they've went through Summit and they can tell you one thing for certain. Green is good and red is not very good. So when you're able to do something and you can check it off, go ahead and make that green. You can set goals in each of your classes. This class all the way across is for English for that week. If you scroll down, we see science. Ooh, then you see math, then medieval history. So there are just some examples of where you can put goals. You can also move them around, which is awesome. This is a demo site, so it's not going to let me do it, but on your view, you can move those around. So maybe you might not need to study because your teacher got sick and so you aren't able to take your content assessment. Or maybe you met your goal faster than you thought. Or maybe you couldn't meet your goal, so you need to move it so that you can make a new study plan or a new goal for the following weeks to come. One other thing you're going to see on this week view is this editing pre-work. I'm sorry, I already clicked it. It would say beginning pre-work. When you click this button, it's going to prompt you with some questions so that you can get ready to talk to your mentor. So mentoring happens once a week. You'll schedule a time to talk to your mentor and they'll spend at least 10 minutes talking to you about how your grades are, what's going on at home, what might you need help with or support. And they're going to make sure that, one, they help you out and give you support. They might connect you with someone who can give you better support. And they're going to show you resources of things that you can do to increase your ability to be successful this year. All of those things can happen alongside of being able to talk about our personal lives. So we want to be able to celebrate our successes, whether it's we passed a content assessment we didn't think we were going to, or we made a touchdown on the football field. All of those things are valuable and we want to know as teachers all those things because we miss you. Having you be far away from us is not our favorite thing. But what we can do is make the most of that time and really increase what we're talking about and how we're talking about things during mentoring. So make sure that you utilize this tool before you meet with your mentor. So if I have a meeting with my mentor, Mr. Huff, on Tuesday, I'm going to make sure that I have it done Monday night so Mr. Huff can look over it. What that also allows us to do is to make sure that we focus on anything that you want to talk about. If you want to talk about math, but I only end up talking about English or maybe football, then we've not really made the best use of your time. So please make sure that you're utilizing that so it can focus us as your mentor and you as a mentee during that time that we get to spend together. If you go ahead and look, you'll go ahead and go through these questions. You won't today, but you will practice that process later. And it's going to ask you a couple of questions. You're going to be able to click through and go through that process, and then it's going to be sent to your mentor so that they can review it. This whole part has been your week view. We're now going to switch to what's called your year view. So if you think about it, we're going like a microscope. We've zoomed all the way in, and now we're taking a step back. We looked at our day-to-day specific goals, and now we're going to look at what's the whole year have in store for us. Because if we are in the classroom or if you're in distance learning and not in person, what you are going to see is the ability to have some ownership over your entire school year, which means you get to see everything and know what's coming next and know what you need to work on, which is really awesome because when the end is in sight, we're motivated to work harder. So let's take a look. If you look on the purple column on the left-hand side, the second icon is called the year view. This year view is going to show you all of your classes. So if you go ahead and look, we have English. We then have science, math, and medieval history. When you look at each of these subjects, you're going to notice that there's 4 lines. Okay, we have power focus areas, additional focus, ooh, I messed up, sorry, projects, power focus areas, additional focus areas, and challenge focus areas. So those 4 lines all mean something really different, and we're going to dig in right now. First of all, the bolded part, we said that's the class. That's your subject that you're in, just like normal, everyday, traditional classroom. The first line right under the subject is your projects. That's what we call the things that we do every single day. Now you will notice for math, it's called something a little bit different. It's called math units. But it's really important to know that the first line is your day-to-day things that you're going to be doing in class. That's going to have your work, your projects that you're going to be working on. That's where you're going to find all of that stuff. So when we're in class and we're in our Google Classrooms and we're teaching, that's mostly where you're going to be, is right there in that project line. And we'll dig in and show you what that looks like. I'm an 8th grade reading and science teacher, so of course I'm a little bit biased and I want to dig right on into English. So let's look at the cultural narratives with flying lessons. So when you click into a project, your view is going to look a little bit different at certain times. If you're beginning a project, it's going to look a little bit different than this. You might only see this first part where it says number 1. That is called a checkpoint. Checkpoints are your assignments that you're going to be having in Summit. They are formative assessments that are going to let us know where you are and what do we need to do to give you some support. If you are struggling with a concept, then we want to be able to help you. So it allows us to figure out where and what we can help you with. If you are, this is easy peasy lemon squeezy and you're moving right along, then maybe you need a little bit more of a challenge, because if it's too easy, then we're not doing our job as teachers to prepare you for the next grade level. So we are able to look and adjust what kind of supports you need based on the things that you're doing in your day-to-day classes. When you click into your first checkpoint, of course your assignment is going to be up, but it will be based differently depending on what your class is and what grade you're in. But for this example, this person has a checkpoint. What I also want to show you is on this page, you're going to see the theme central idea right here. So this is the focus of the checkpoint. We're going to talk about the theme and central idea and what you're graded on when we talk about grades a little bit later. But essentially your grades are based on a rubric. There's no longer like a test that you're going to get that you just get like 2 out of 10 points, but you aren't really sure why. Or you wrote a paper and you got a C+, but you aren't really sure what you did or you didn't do. Looking and having a rubric for every single thing forces us as teachers to pinpoint exactly what things you did well and what things you still need to work on, which means that you have an opportunity to reflect revise, and resubmit, which means that you get to look over our feedback, fix it, and then turn it back in if you need to. Now that doesn't always apply because maybe you did the assignment and you did awesome and maybe you don't need to resubmit it. But if you didn't do so well and you didn't understand the directions, then we're going to give you some support. You can go back and fix it and turn it back in, which is awesome. Some other things you're going to notice here are resources for everyone. So these are going to look differently depending on what your project is, where you are within the project, but here's going to be all kinds of resources. These are going to be things like your reading check, workshops, presentations for you to watch. Sometimes that even means like a pre-test so that we can understand what kind of support you need before we get started. You're also going to see resources for you. So these are going to be assigned to you by your teachers, and these are going to be different. So yours might be different than the person who's next to you, or if you have a brother or sister at home that's in the same grade, which I know there's several of you at our school that are like that, what they have assigned to them might look different than what's assigned to you. And we call that differentiation, meaning that no two students are 100% the same, that every single student needs something different, and it's our job to figure it out so that you can be successful. When you click into this checkpoint, you're going to see on the right-hand side the rubric. So there are 36 cognitive skills in Summit Learning. That means there's 36 rubrics that you're going to be graded on throughout the year. So instead of just having random grades, everything is based around this rubric for your day-to-day projects. This rubric tells you exactly what you need to do within that assignment to get that score. Your teachers will go over what scores are for your grade level because there's certain parameters. So for example, I teach 8th grade. We want students to be between a 3 and a 5 on the rubric. So you'll see that there are different numbers right here that are going to indicate that for you. Teachers are allowed to highlight these, and green means great, you did it, and purple means that you need to go back and reflect and resubmit that part to increase your score. We'll talk more about that in the days to come, but just put in the back of your head that this is your checkpoint. These are things that you're going to be working on a day-to-day basis. The second thing I want to point out to you here is that the numbers on the side, we see yellow, green, red, those are going to be, the numbers are going to tell you which checkpoint that you have. So green means you scored well, yellow means, there's some things you should probably look at, and red means you need to absolutely 100% revise and resubmit at least that process once, and depending more based on what the assignment is and who your teacher is. So make sure you're paying attention to that red, yellow, green light that pops up with your checkpoints, because that's going to help you get to your final product. Your final product is where the bulk of your grade is. Sorry, I clicked back one too many times. It is all the way down here, and those are your stars. So the stars indicate that once you get to the end of the project, that those are the things that are going to carry a significant weight for your grade. Depending on what they are, for this project, you have a book journal. I know for Miss Kids, there's several of her units that have book journals, for my class as well, and I'm sure for Miss Van Hoos's. So that's something you're going to have to do throughout the project in order to keep up with your reading and tell us your reflections from what you're reading. Then for this project, there's a final narrative, meaning that there's a writing piece involved, and your teacher will instruct you throughout on how to build that narrative and what that should look like. And then for this one, you're going to have a presentation. You might be like, oh, but we're on the computer online. We've got all kinds of ideas of how to incorporate that into a virtual learning experience for you, so don't worry. This, in a nutshell, is your projects. However, as we start to learn and dig deeper, this will come second nature to you, and you'll know exactly where to click. Your teachers are going to be able to explain to you and remind you where these things are all throughout the year, so don't worry. We're just exploring today. All right, so now we've went over the first view, our projects, not view, sorry, our first line, which is our projects. Our second line is our power focus areas. Power focus areas are a fancy name to say a test, okay? So instead of having just one test throughout a unit, you are going to be able to kind of self-pace yourself throughout these content assessments. These words I kind of use interchangeably, so I use the word focus area and content assessment and test, but they all mean the same thing. So bear with me because I'm in a terrible habit of that. But the power focus areas are always 10 questions. So no matter what the subject is, no matter what the topic is, your test is only 10 questions, okay? What's awesome about that is it's only 10 questions. What is a little bit more difficult is that you have to have an 80% or higher to pass that content assessment. So there's no longer the days of where you get a 60%, your teacher gives it back to you, it gets put in a folder, and then you like move on and you're not accountable for what you learned or you didn't know or didn't learn, excuse me. So when you take a content assessment, you're going to be able to retake that test if necessary. Now, the goal is to not have to take it 100 times, because also, we're a little bit smart, is those questions regenerate. So every time you take a test, those questions are different. So you're not going to have the same questions. So you can't outsmart that system there. But what you are going to have to do is be really intentional about how you're going to study, how you're utilizing your time, and what you're taking away from each unit. So you're going to have to really focus in on those classes that we're having every day and look at what we're doing in our projects and studying a little bit extra to make sure that you get that grade. So for example, in reading, this first content assessment is called Reading Strategies 7. When you click into the Power Focus area, what's going to pop up first is a diagnostic, and that's just a fancy word to say pretest, okay? You could retake it, but it's just going to generate a couple of questions and kind of give you a plan of how to study. I'm just going to click in here and we're going to see, yeah, okay, it's the demo, so it's not going to let me do that, so we're going to back up. We backed up too far. And I clicked on the wrong one. Fun, isn't that? Okay, so we were here, our year view. We're on the second line, which is our Power Focus area. And let's look at one that we haven't passed, or this student hasn't passed. You would take the diagnostic first. And what that pretest is going to do is let you know what are the things that you need to study. Let's go to one that she's already taken. So if we were to look, she scored an 8 out of 10. It tells us up at the top. So she passed, but we're just looking so we can learn. Some things that you're going to see are some introductory materials. Here might be a note taker, might be a study guide. It might be a resource that you can use to help you pass that content assessment. Now, you can't use it while you're taking the content assessment. That would just be crazy. But you can do it to prepare. This year is all about preparation and making sure that we're meeting our goals by being strategic and intentional with our actions. The other thing that you're going to notice here is where it says objective 1, objective 2. That's going to let you know what's the test about. So this test is about define common reading strategies. And when you click on it, it's going to show you all different kinds of things that you can study. Now, we know as teachers that you could say, oh, yes, Ms. Tackett, I studied all of those things and it's awesome. However, we're very smart. This gives you a check after you've studied that material for a significant portion of time. So we're able to see what you've studied and what you've not studied. So make sure that you're being honest with yourself and don't cheat yourself out of an experience. But you're also allowed to study in all kinds of different ways. If you're a person who likes watching YouTube videos to figure something out, there's YouTube videos on here. If you're a person who likes to read like me, there's places where you can read and study different books or materials or articles so that you can understand what that objective is asking. And then there's also checks for understanding. So there's going to be a place where you can do practice questions to see how you're doing and if you're close to meeting the goal of that objective. You're going to see that there's multiple objectives. In my science class, there's one content assessment that has like 5 objectives. So sometimes they range, sometimes it's 2 objectives, sometimes it's 5. An objective is just what's the standard or thing that we're trying to test you on? What content knowledge do you need to know? And then lastly, here will be your content assessment. So when you take content assessments, you'll request them and you will have to find a time in your PLT time, which we'll talk about in just a little bit, or during office hours while we're in virtual learning. So you'll have to schedule that out with your teacher and find time to take those content assessments, because here's the really cool thing, is when you're taking these assessments, it's on your own pace. So if it's the 5th week of school and you're on the first focus area and you've taken it once and you've not passed, but you haven't studied either, then you get a little bit longer to study. However, you have to watch where your time is going and how you're spending it so that you can make sure to be the most effective that you can be. At the same time, this also means if you take the first content assessment during the 2nd week of school, you got an 8 out of 10 or higher, then you get to move on to the next one. You don't have to wait for me, your teacher, to be able to do that, or whoever your teachers are. You can just keep moving right along as long as you are taking that diagnostic, studying, and then taking that content assessment, which is really awesome. Some other things that I want to point out really quick is right here on the right-hand side, you're going to see a description of what the test is going to be asking. You're going to see key terms, so those are vocabulary that you should know. You're going to see the score you need to pass, which is an 8 out of 10 for all of them. And then you're going to see what project you should be taking that assessment with. So if you are falling behind, you want to be sure that you're not falling too far behind, because it will be very difficult to catch up. Let's go ahead and go back. That is our content assessments. Give it just a second. Power focus areas are content assessments or tests that you have to take in order to pass your grade. So that means every single one that's in this line. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 are all things that you're going to have to pass before you can leave the grade level that you're in. Now let's talk about the third line. The third line right here is called additional focus areas. These additional focus areas are extra, meaning that if you want to have an A, you have to do the extra work, which is the additional focus areas. You have to complete all of them just like you did your power focus areas. Now, if you're a student and an A doesn't mean very much to you and you could care less about your grades, one, I think that's a conversation you should have with your mentor, because grades really are a reflection on you as a student. And two, we always want to do what's best for ourselves. So maybe that's a conversation you want to have with your mentor, but this is only going to create the top 9% of your grade, which we'll talk about a little bit later. However, those are optional, but there's no way for you to get an A in any of your classes without doing these additional focus areas. So just keep that in the back of your mind. They work exactly the same as the power focus areas. They're set up the same. The content is just a little bit of expansion of what the power focus area was. So we will talk about those more later, but just know that they're similar to the power focus areas, except you have to do them if you want to get an A in that course. Now the last line, you have the challenge focus areas as your fourth line. These are absolutely optional unless they are holding a place for some of your reading classes. Sometimes we'll have reading comprehension quizzes that we leave there, but we pull up when we get to that point in our text into the power focus areas. So watch out for changes throughout the year as we start to read books. The challenge focus areas, though, besides that, are completely optional. They have no effect on your grade. They're there if maybe you're really interested in that subject or topic, or maybe you're on the academic team and need a place to get some more information so that you can study. So that is just extra. Don't feel like you have to do that. Even when you pass, they don't turn red or green. They're just there. They're blue. One last thing on this page, the big kit and caboodle. What you're going to see down the middle is the blue line. Now, this blue line has a tendency to haunt people throughout the school year. What it is it's measured and it's calculated right down to our school year. So it moves every single day and every single week so that it shows you our progression throughout the school year. You always want to be ahead of the blue line. It's so important that you know that. If you fall behind, then your content assessments are going to turn red. Okay, even if you've taken them once and you might have got a 7 out of 10, if the next day the blue line moves and now it's behind it, it's going to be red. So just prepare yourself and try to monitor your work so that you're able to stay ahead of the blue line. You will notice that this blue line moves. It will move on your view. Sorry about that. So that you can kind of see when it's going to pass that content assessment. Let's keep going. Let's go back to our purple column on the side. The next icon is called your progress tab. What this allows you to do is to see your grades. Now, your parents are going to be thrilled because it does a couple of different aspects. First of all, this is the exact same view that your parents see and what you see. So there's no like mysterious view of what Infinite Campus might be and what kind of like secrets there are there. Every day you have the opportunity to look at this. It's at your disposal every single day, 24 hours a day. Couple of things you're going to notice. One, let's start on the right-hand side, is it's going to show you all of your courses. So we have English, science, math, and medieval history. What you're going to notice is that these all say off track. So in Summit, instead of saying that you have a D or an F, it says that you're off track because you're off track to not being able to finish the school year strong. And that unfortunately happens to a lot of students. However, what we can do is as we're monitoring our progress throughout the school year, we're going to be able to see where our grades are. So let's go ahead and let's click into the students to see what their grades look like. First of all, before we click, this is one power focus area off track. That means she's behind the blue line by one focus area. So that's why she's off track. It may not even be because she has a low grade. She's just not in her timing or placement where she is for the school year. I know that this is a lot of information, but remember, like today is just a big overview, and then you'll learn more as the days progress. So let's look into English. Her grade in the class is a 74%. Okay, if we look in her projects, it's 81%. Her power focus areas is 66%, and she's done 0 additional focus areas, meaning that she's not helping her grade out whatsoever. She's also behind in one of her power focus areas, so she could have increased that percentage by taking the focus area to get back on track. Now, she doesn't have to just take it, but she also has to pass it with at least an 8 out of 10. So that means she's either got to get an 8 out of 10, 9 out of 10, or 10 out of 10 in order to pass. You're going to see down here some diagnostic parts. This is going to let you know where in your projects you're scoring, and we'll talk more about that in just a little bit, but know that all of that information's right here so that you can see it. The other part that you're going to enjoy, and so are your parents, is right here in the middle. It's going to tell them every single day the stuff that you're doing or you're not doing. It shows that this student mastered the content assessment with an 8 out of 10 on October 26th. Oh, sorry, October 27th. That's going to let your parents know if they check your Infinite Campus, because our stuff's not going to be in Infinite Campus, but if they check your grades and look, this is what they're going to see, and they're going to want to celebrate you for that. It also shows them when you submitted work, how long it took you to submit that work, and if you didn't turn it in at all. So there's a lot of transparency with what you're doing for your classes. So there's no longer like, yeah, Mom, I turned that into Miss Tackett, but she never graded it or gave it back, because it's going to show her when I graded it and when you got it back. Everything is, you can see it, and it's in real time. So that's really awesome. It also here is going to tell you your mentor. So this progress view is going to be really interesting. You will not see your grades really, and we'll talk about that with the grades portion, until after you finish your first project. So it is going to take a little bit of time for you to see the letter grades that we're used to in the traditional classroom. The reason is because this is calculated different, and I'll explain that in the grading section. Now we have 2 more icons to talk about really quick, and I know that I've talked a lot, but I promise it's going to get better. The next one you have is the college tab. And I'm not going to click into all these things, but it's a great resource for you to start looking at. We live in a world today where in 6th, 7th, and 8th grade, you really have to start knowing and identifying what you might be interested in studying and what college or career path that you want to go into, so you can take the precursors to those in high school. Especially for those of you who are in 7th and 8th grade, like, high school is right around the corner, and it happens before you know it and before we realize too. So this is going to have lots of information that kind of set you up. Talks about different courses that you might need to take for that career path. How do you get started? What grades do you need? Like if I want to go to UK, can I go if I got C's and D's all in high school? It's going to be talking about those things. So just know that it's here, and we'll talk more about it. The last tab is your resources tab. This is going to show you 2 different things. One, it's going to show you all of your rubrics. So remember we talked about you're always graded on a rubric for your day-to-day work. All of the rubrics are going to be housed there, and they're also housed in your projects too. So when you're looking at that work, you can do that also and see it. The other part is learning strategies. This is really awesome. So make sure that you're paying attention, because I know I've talked a lot and I know the way my voice sounds is not awesome. Right here is the good stuff. Here we have lots of different resources that can help you, especially in a time where we're in distance learning and your teacher's not with you every second throughout the day. So this is going to be a place where if you're struggling with mastering not just content, but skills that are going to help you be successful, here are some ways that you can learn different capacities to help you be more successful. So one would be like taking notes. There's different notes that you can take in order to learn those content assessments. Each of these resources are going to have multiple videos. It has all of these parts, like what is outline notes, how does it work, when should I use it, why does it work, tips, and citations. So it's going to have tons of information for you to go through. Our students last year really liked the next parts of the resource tab. This setting SMART goals for their week view, like learning how to set those goals and how to make them strong. And they also loved being able to do conquering test anxiety. That allowed them to kind of explore, why do we feel so anxious when we take a test? Why do we not feel very confident? And it's going to show you lots of resources that you can do to kind of practice for that. So that's a great place for you to kind of work on your own and explore later today. What we're going to do is, in just a second, we are going to do a scavenger hunt, meaning all the things that we just talked about, you're going to go in and find some answers and kind of work as quickly as you can so that you can win an incredibly awesome prize. So let's make sure that we're tuned in. I know I just spoke a lot, but stay tuned, and we're going to talk about some directions that go with that scavenger hunt. Thank you guys so much.